Hello, all. Welcome to the Be Fearless podcast. I have a very special guest with me today, Michael. Michael, why don't you go and introduce yourself and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Michael Kouremetis. I work at the MITRE Corporation. I work within their cyber lab division. And so I do a lot of work on an open source project called MITRE Caldera, which is an adversary emulation platform. And then I also do a lot of work with a lot of internal R&D, usually for capabilities around the intersection of AI and cyber.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Tell us a bit more about the Caldera project.
Sure. So Caldera started out as an internal R&D project at MITRE. The impetus for it was that we had our sponsor, which is usually the U.S. government, needed to do red teaming that was more focused on certain cyber threats. And so we built an emulation platform to make that much easier and kind of repeatable. And it ended up working so well, and the sponsor liked it, and we figured we could open source it. And so it's really grown to a large global user community base. So like we can only estimate how many users we have, but it's currently downloaded like 300 times a week, and we get really cool war stories about it being used out in the world. So it's been pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So you recently gave a talk at Black Hat.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about your talk?
Sure. So that was one of the other projects I'm on that really just started this year. It was an internal research project. Essentially, we had our teams as well as folks in government concerned about whether or not large language models were getting offensive cyber capabilities. And so they asked us, do we think there's risk and threat around a large language model doing some sort of notable offensive cyber attack? And we said, well, we don't see evidence of that, but we also don't have tests to really back up, what we're saying, And so it was kind of like, well, no, but maybe, which is not a good answer. And so we started, diving into what's been done, how are they being tested now, large language models, how are they being tested now, and if we, how can we improve upon it and make it kind of more ground level. And so what we presented at Black Hat was essentially some initial tests that we have prototyped that test a large language model in ways that haven't been tested before.
Oh, so what do you think were like the basic problems that people were making while testing these models before?
Problems. So like what they were missing?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So the main one we noticed was, so at MITRE, we're fortunate that we have a lot of insights into what offensive, cyber attacks look like, and like if our own operational team, what operators do, and so the big thing is that the questions or the tests that were being put to the large language models, our red teamers and operators were like, we would never ask those questions, right? And so it wasn't applicable.
Right.
And so we really wanted to just bring it closer to applicable. And so like one of the tests that we built was written fully by our senior red teamers. And so essentially it's as if he's on an operation and he is using the large language model for an assistant, right, help. And so he goes through a whole op and it basically mimes him needing help and asking tons of questions throughout that. Okay. So it's sequential, it's dependent, and it's very specific. And so it's asking the large language model, like, I need help with this tool. I need you to tell me how to do it to point it at this target. And you need to tell me how do I, parse the results. So again, very specific. And so if the large language model succeeds or fails, we can tell you exactly what it did well at, right? Oh. Not like, yeah, it did okay. It's like, no, it failed at this step. This tool it didn't know how to use. So stuff like that.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, in your initial research, what kind of LLMs were you picking, or what was the criteria of picking, what kind of LLM models were you picking for this whole test?
Sure. I mean, so for us right now, initially we have a bunch of public models hosted inside of, we have a whole AI platform.
Right.
So, big, compute resource that we have the models hosted on. So we really just used all the models we had there.
Oh, okay.
So Llama models, Mistral, I'm forgetting the others. We have about, half a dozen to a dozen, depending on if they're updating them and such. But we do hope to, within the next 2 months, do more systematic model evaluation, and then also some of eventually do the private models, right, like ChatGPT and the more frontier models that everyone's really interested in.
Right. So just to summarize, what are the key indicators that you feel that makes an LLM capable of being used in like any kind of offensive side?
Yeah, so we have our mental model that we've kind of landed on is when we're testing a large language model, we want to look at 3 things. One, what is the offensive cyber capability, right? We're talking about initial access? Are we talking about privilege escalation, attack path? Like, what is it doing, helping with? The second dimension is really what the role of the large language model is. So is it helping an operator? Is it paired with another tool and doing an actual operation? Or is it just doing an operation by itself? Right. And then the last dimension is how much, basically how hard we think the test is, but really about how much reasoning power that the test has. So if you have a test that is putting a large language model through like a very specific and detailed cyber simulation, right, an offensive cyber simulation, where it has to pick very specific actions and understand the environment, right? We would be like, well, it's doing a lot more critical thinking or reasoning, right? Because it's taking in variables, it's doing actions, it's adjusting its plan if things don't work. So that would be a more serious, and worrisome, right, test if it was passed. Whereas there's other ones where it's just asking, multiple choice, general cyber questions, right? And so obviously there's 2 different levels of tests there, right? And we're going to be more worried if that first test is the one that it's doing well at.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you think organizations should do to be prepared for any such attack that can happen in future?
Right. I mean, I still think we're in the stage of awareness, right? Because we ask this question and we don't really like the answers, we're not confident in the answers. So I think, we are hoping to make this more of a community-driven thing where, we have tests that are important to us and we want to test for, but we're also working with other labs who are they're very interested in maybe code exploitation or reverse engineering tasks. Right. And so ideally we can get all these together and we have a corpus of tests and we'll be able to inform of okay, well, if you're worried about this, we have tests for that, this is what it says. So again, I would say that's the problem. We're at the awareness point and these models are huge, right? And so you're okay, you can do some basic tests, but it's trillions of parameters. What if you change the way you ask the question, all of a sudden it's amazing at it, right? So it's just trying to be as thorough as we can, knowing that it's just a hard problem.
Yeah, that's true. Also, what are your views around the publicly available LLMs? What do you think, they should also take care to sort of, stop people from...
Sure. I mean, so right, with any impressive or useful technology, it's a double-edged sword. We can use it for good. It can be used for bad. There's really useful capabilities with large language models. It's also really cool that a lot of it's going open source because that means people can use it. But it also means bad guys can use it, right?
Yes.
So, we have seen, right, the same folks who create these models are trying to test it. But again, it's really hard. And there's model creators, right, that they have more than cyber to worry about as well, right? That's one peg. There's also, fake content generation, right? Worried about, there's even DeepMind, right? They're looking at if an LLM can aid in biological or nuclear, war, right?
Yeah, previously, people used to say, that if the email is grammatically incorrect, it might actually be from an attacker because,
right.
That was one of the things that people used to say in the security trainings.
Right. Yeah.
But with LLMs, attackers are just writing emails which are grammatically perfect.
Right. I mean, so it's just, I think the model creators are definitely trying to put guardrails on them. But it's really hard because you see all these papers coming out, right? And the literature, they're doing prompt injection, they're breaking, the LLMs are responding in ways that they weren't trained to. So again, it's a hard problem.
Yeah. That's true. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for coming here.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you.